Now then, when you think of Canada, what do you think of? Well, perhaps maple syrup, huge, beautiful trees, frozen winters, perhaps. Those are the clichés, of course. But what about progressivity, respect for the rule of law, a trusted ally? Well, in fact, all of the above. Apparently what French people think of Canada, according to a new report that the Canadian Embassy here in Paris is releasing this week, and here to talk about it is the ideal person, the Canadian ambassador here to France is Isabelle Hudon, appointed by the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in September of 2017. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about those clichés first of all. I mean, France has its clichés, of course, Eiffel Tower, food, garlic, maybe even you might say.
Baguette.
Baguette, exactly. I mean, do you feel proud, if you like, about the clichés that French people think of?
Of course, and they're real. Maple syrup is real, and you know what maple syrup represents in an economy, something very important, though there's way much more. I came here 2 years ago with the instincts that the relation between both France and Canada had evolved. Of course, friendship is there, and the survey confirmed that the friendship is strong and a solid base, but there's way much more than friendship. And I would pick the word trust for the overall results of the survey. French are looking at Canada as a country that is well aligned to France, a trusty partner and ally, as you said in your intro.
Yeah,
and that makes me proud.
I mean, other words came up as well, didn't they? Things like reliable, progressive, respect for law, trusted ally, as you say. I mean, how important do you think are all those things when you mix them all together?
Well, reliable, I was quite happy to see the results first on the trade front. As you know, we have CETA, a trade agreement negotiated between Canada and Europe. And when I came here in 2017, I was not too sure how French were looking at Canada as a trade partner. And that's one of the strong results in the survey, whereby we come as a very, very strong and trustful trade partner. And that's not a small thing, because I remember 2 years ago, many people were like, I want to keep away from signing trade agreement, but then results are showing that among all countries, if French are not able to conclude a trade agreement with Canada, with whom they will do so. And results are showing that they're pretty proud. Like, all results are above 80% of French thinking positively about Canada. And one result that makes me smile is French people love Canada as much as they do love their own country. We're head-to-head with France, Canada as a loved country.
Yeah. I mean, talking about trade deals, obviously there's been so much in the news recently about trade deals, particularly involving the US and China. But I mean, that whole need for trade deals, you see that very much as part of a way forward that's important to you?
Well, it is. And first of all, Canada has realized in the last few years that to be too dependent on one trade partner, that ain't a good strategy. And I'll make you smile on this one. But also, when we look at numbers, trade numbers between both Canada and France, we're not doing enough, and we should do way much more. France is doing with Canada what they do with Germany in less than a week, and the same for us with US. So there's a lot of potential. The trade agreement that was negotiated with the EU is one very progressive, and it's not only about tariffs and prices, it's about respecting environment also. It's one of the major concerns whereby those trade agreements, are they respecting way much more than the price on goods and services. So we're pretty proud of that agreement. And numbers are showing now, after 18 months, that trade is growing. And you know what? More rapidly on the French side than the Canadian one.
Good for you, obviously. Of course, language is important as well, isn't it? I mean, particularly Anglophones perhaps forget about the fact that 20% of Canada's population is French-speaking. How important is that for the links?
Do we really forget that we speak French in Canada?
I think a lot of people do, actually, I have to say.
But you're right. It's a bilingual country. Of course, in Quebec and a few other provinces, you have majority of people speaking French. And doing business with Canada from a French perspective, that helps that there's no language barrier to start with. Quebec can be the first door to Canada for French exporters, and I also say that Canada is the door to North American.
All these facts and figures and words that we've mentioned, I mean, why did you do this survey in the first place? Because, I mean, reading it, you can sort of see why you would do it, but at the same time, a lot of it's sort of fairly obvious, isn't it?
Well, first of all, I come from the private sector, so numbers and facts for me are quite important. And I came here 2 years ago with instincts. I was more and more convinced that my instincts were right, but I wanted to put numbers on those instincts. And also, we did a survey 15 years ago, and I wanted to see the progression. And we've seen a net progression. Canada is being recognized now for technology and for green technology, whereby 15 years ago we were known for maple syrup and other clichés, as you mentioned. So I wanted to have facts and not only instincts.
And does that come from your business background as well, do you think?
It is. I would say that it comes from my business background, but also my curiosity on making sure that we speak not only the right language, but that we present ourselves in front of a country like France with the right mental setting.
I wanted to talk as well about women's rights. I mean, you've won awards for your work in women's rights. You were, for example, a member of the federal government's advisory council created to promote the participation of women on corporate boards. So much has changed, but how much more do you think needs to change?
There's way much more that needs to keep on changing, and we need to keep on acting so that the change happens faster. I've been an activist for this cause for the last 20 years. I thought moving into my diplomat career that I would need to put on hold a little bit of this activist, and you know what? As soon as I arrived in France, my reputation followed me, and I'm very much involved. And I do think that we need to keep the conversation happen, and we need that conversation to happen so that we act on this, and not only lobby for more parity, but that we act on a daily basis in favor of gender parity. And here my position is that we need to bring women in society in leadership roles so that we can have that great complementarité between men and women. I'm not one saying that it should be women all over the place, but we're 52% of the population, and we have the right to have our share of leadership, education, and way much more.
Okay, and I'm sure it's something that you will continue to pursue as well. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today. That's Isabelle Hudon, the Canadian ambassador here to France. Thanks very much.
Merci, Stuart.
Very nice.